Well, that's good.
That part's good, yeah.
Mainly a cannabis discussion, but so this is another video in an ongoing effort to introduce people to some history, some advocacy efforts, some activism, some practical information about cannabis and what's going on in the stores and stuff. And in this case, we have the legendary John Sinclair, who is responsible for kicking off Hash Bash. Some people have heard a little bit about Lenny Sinclair lately with the products that are coming out. That was John's former wife. She, as he says, did a lot of the same stuff except for have to go to
She
jail.
didn't have to do the time.
Right. And but it's John's story ultimately that leads to Hash Bash.
Wow. Yeah. They say there was an event. I was in prison, so I can't really testify to what happened in 1971 in Ann Arbor, except they say that on April Fool's Day, they had a rally in my behalf
And that would,
on the Diag, and they smoked joints, and they called for Free John Sinclair. The next year I was out. I got out in December of 71. And when it came time, April 1st was April Fool's Day. It was on a Saturday, just like this year, 52 years later.
this is the 52nd Hash Bash.
And so I never knew where they got the name, but I met in California a few years ago a person who was part of our organization named Walden Simper. She was an artist. And she said she was assigned to do the flyer for this event on the Diag on April Fool's Day. And she came up with the name Hash Bash and put it on the flyer. And evidently that's how it started. But the purpose of it for 72, you see, okay, it gives kind of thick here. On December 10th, 1971, the key event that got me out of prison was held at the Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor. It was called the John Sinclair Freedom Rally. And we were blessed with the presence of John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
A long list of very
along with
notable.
Stevie Wonder, Phil Oakes, Archie Shepp, Bobby Seale, Allen Ginsberg, etc., etc., etc. 3 days later, I got out. Well, this benefit was planned. This rally had been planned in the summer of 71 to put pressure on the legislature because the previous year there was a bill to remove marijuana from the narcotics law. See, marijuana was regarded as a narcotic until 1972. They said it was a narcotic. That shows you how what a lying mess this whole thing is, because if anybody knows anything, it's that marijuana is not a narcotic. It's not even toxic. In fact, there's nothing wrong with marijuana. It's a health. It's a healing drug.
It's a positive, yeah.
It's a plant. So I insisted from my perch in the Jackson Penitentiary that we have a big event in December to put pressure on the legislature, because the previous year, this bill sponsored by Perry Bullard had gotten to the point of a vote, and instead of voting on the bill, they voted to take a winter recess. And so what it meant to me was I had to do another year. Well, I didn't want to do a third year, so I insisted that we have a big event and put pressure and do whatever we could to put pressure on the legislature. In August, I believe, of 71, through some help with our friends, we put a full-page ad in the Detroit Free Press calling for my freedom and legalization of marijuana. So that was the big announcement that led up to this thing. Well, when John Lennon and Yoko Ono committed to playing this benefit, which was about a week before, the legislature knew that it was over by then. If the Beatles were coming to Michigan to play for this guy who was in prison, something was terribly wrong. And so on December 9th, the day before the rally, they voted to reclassify marijuana as a controlled substance. They removed it from the narcotics laws. On December 10th, we had the rally. On the 13th, I was released. On the 9th of March, I was released on appeal bond. Up until John Lennon showed up, they wouldn't give me an appeal bond.
Mm-hmm.
They said I was a danger to society.
Mm-hmm.
This was adjudicated by the local court in Detroit, the Michigan Court of Appeals, and the Michigan Supreme Court. They all said I was a danger to society, couldn't be allowed out on bond on this charge of possessing 2 marijuana cigarettes.
He passed 2 joints to an undercover cop.
Yeah, giving them away. I was charged with 20 to life until the day before my trial also. I should bring that up. For 2.5 years out on bond, facing a 20 to life sentence. And the day before the trial, they dropped that, but they wouldn't give me an appeal bond. So I did 2.5 years in prison. But at all times, we fought back against my imprisonment. The Free John Now campaign grew and grew. Every week there was some kind of event put on by bands and other hippies in Michigan in my behalf to raise consciousness.
Somebody jumped out at Woodstock and let everybody know about your
Abby
situation.
Hoffman wasn't somebody.
Yeah, it wasn't just somebody, but that was one of those times. Yeah.
Woodstock would have been August of '69. After I went in on July 25th of 1969. So that was a month later, Woodstock. Well, that was just one of, in Michigan, every week there was something. Because all hippies and all bands, I was a member of the band, I managed a band called the MC5, which was the #1 band in Michigan. So I knew everybody knew me. I also was the producer of the free concert series in Ann Arbor. We had free concerts every summer, every Sunday in the summer. So everybody knew me personally. I wasn't like some abstract person. I was like a guy who everybody knew. I was the manager of the MC5. I was the guy who got him the gig at the Grandy Ballroom. I was the guy who put him on the free concert in front of 3,000 people when they just came out of their basement. You know, so I mean, I had the support of all these people. So on the 9th, the legislature passed the bill. That was the turning point of this whole thing. And then my conviction being reversed and the definition of marijuana as a narcotic thrown out. That was the next step. The next step was when we passed the $5 fine in marijuana for any marijuana offense.
A civil infraction, $5 ticket.
Any offense of marijuana, whether you had 15 tons or 2 joints, $5. So that made Ann Arbor, we used to call it the dope capital of the Midwest.
So, like, there was about 3-week period where there was no laws.
Oh, God, thanks for keeping me on track.
Oh, you're wrong. I like hearing about the other stuff.
It's so rich. There's so many details that I get sidetracked. So for 3 weeks, from March 9th to March 31st, inclusive, there was no marijuana law in the state of Michigan. So we made the most of this. We put on all kinds of little rock events, dances where you smoked weed. We had a religious organization called the First Sentai Church of Ann Arbor, where marijuana and psychedelic drugs were the sacraments. And so we were trying to create a foundation for people to protest their arrest by saying it was a religious thing. Well, after my conviction was overturned, we didn't need that too much anymore. We use it to own our property because taxes were not paid by churches.
Right.
So when we bought our 2 houses in Ann Arbor, we didn't pay any taxes because we were a church. So for these 3 weeks, we just had a ball. And then we thought.
And then there was no like horrible fallout from there being no laws or regulations.
There wasn't any law.
Right. But I mean, like, because they didn't have any regulation or control or law on cannabis, there was no negative consequences to speak of.
Well, they didn't ride down on any of our events. No.
Right.
No, there was, but they were gonna, on April 1st, it was gonna become a controlled substance with a 90-day sentence for possession, 1 year for some other kind of possession, and 4 years for sale.
Or transfer.
That was the new law. So we thought this was supposed to go into effect on April 1st. We thought April 1st, that's April Fool's Day. We need to have an event to raise the middle finger to these people, and to say that even though they had changed this law, it's not gonna work any better of making us stop smoking marijuana. We're gonna smoke marijuana. We're gonna do it in public. We're gonna do it on the diag of the Holy University of Michigan, and fuck them all. Hash bash. Come on out and have a ball. So that was how the hash bash started. And the thing was, we kept it going every year. And even after we disbanded a couple years later, 75, I moved back to Detroit, but they kept it going. And then, Jesus, in the 70s, Adam Brooke got involved, and for about 20 years he kept it going. Yeah. And he brought me back in about 95.
Yeah.
I came back in on it because I had retired from activism because I was so disgusted with the people involved with this thing. Because when they got the bill in the Michigan legislature to legalize marijuana, sponsored by Perry Bullard,
70s, yeah.
Opponents of Perry Bullard attacked him physically on the floor of the Michigan House of Representatives. And the senator, for a black female senator from Detroit, maintained that marijuana led to heroin. And so this was the level of the argument in the Michigan legislature after we passed this other law to try and get it the rest of the way, which then took another 40 years.
Right.
Until 2018. This was like 1978. So there it is.
That is,
ladies and cheese.
Yeah, that is quite impressive. There was a little downtime, of course, because of COVID, but many people, yourself, Adam, many others still showed up on sacred ground nonetheless. And
we even did it when we weren't supposed to.
Exactly.
Well, I didn't make it last year because I was in the hospital and they wouldn't let me leave.
And Adam did a really nice tribute to you. People could still
love it. He read one of my poems.
He did.
That's really sick.
It was apropos. Yep.
Well, God willing, I'll be there this year.
Yeah, looking forward to it. 52nd Hash Bash. People have been working on this for decades. Part of the whole reason in the beginning, was to not have to have people worry about smoking some cannabis and then go to jail over something as ridiculous as that.
Very simple.
And yet, we've come a long way.
Marijuana is not a narcotic.
Right. People are still in jail, though. Some of us make a living doing today, and that is legal otherwise. And it's
normal. I hate to say this because my friend Rick is the head of Michigan Normal, but Normal for years under Keith Stroop was a good friend of mine.
He's a lawyer who helped to found the original National Normal.
I knew him in 72. when he started it. I was with a group called Amorphia, based in San Francisco. I was on the board. Amorphia manufactured Acapulco Gold cigarette papers, used the proceeds for legalization purposes to pay for their costs. They started the California Marijuana Initiative, the first one, 72, Proposition 19. I was there fighting for it.
Nice.
I forgot why I got onto that. Oh, Keith too. Normal. I felt that Normal, being an organization of lawyers, basically kept the things the way they were in order to get the cases. And for 40 years, they represented people and went in and pled them guilty. They sent them to drug rehabilitation classes.
Which was its own scam. Yeah.
What kind of rehabilitation do you need for marijuana? None. Anyway, I felt that they froze the marijuana movement. And the only thing that got it off of zero was the gay people in San Francisco and Los Angeles who needed it to sharpen their appetite.
Brownie Mary.
Whatever they call them.
Well, Brownie Mary was a nurse that helped to get
right.
infused brownies to a lot of the AIDS patients and stuff like that. Yeah.
But the leaders of the AIDS prevention groups in San Francisco and in LA were the ones who got the medical marijuana recognized and passed.
Right.
And the great Dennis Perone of San Francisco.
Yeah, I still see stuff from him from time to time, which is cool.
Another big publication. And he covered this. So I would go out there and he would take me around to meet all the people that he was dealing with. These people in LA were really uptight, kind of squares. They just used the weed so they'd have appetite. But they hated Dennis Perone. So despite this, they passed the thing in California, and that was the beginning of the modern era, 1996. And it took us 12 more years to pass it here, and then another 10 years to extend it to recreational marijuana.
And we still got a ways to go because people are still in jail,
because we got to get rid of the police.
Yeah, there's too many restrictions and all that kind of shit.
You got to take it out of the hands of the police and the state. They don't have anything to do with it. The only interest they have in is in the revenues. And there should be limited to what the revenues are from selling any other form of vegetable. That's what I believe. They don't have any business in the marijuana industry whatsoever, except to keep people from ripping off other people.
Some regulatory controls.
And they aren't doing that. It's set up the other way. They're setting up this industry to rip people off, and now they're complaining because they can't rip them off for as much as they could a year ago. Well, Jesus Christ. Excuse me.
Well, hey, we contained the story and we got a little extra bonus in there, man. I just appreciate it. That's all we got to do for right now. We'll talk about some other shit. Yeah, but thank you very much, man. You rule, John.
Once today already. I don't want to do it again.
Good job. Well,
it's almost 6 o'clock.
All right, now let's just do exactly what we just talked about again one more time before we leave. Just kidding. All right. Yeah, we'll get rocking here, John. 52nd annual Hash Bash. That is how it all got started.